It's the allure of the wild, it's the charm of the dust. In the land of the Corsa, it's a soul deep trust. From Jeffrey's Bay Spray to the County High, you're a vision of wonder in the fading light. Oh, Eastern Cape Eden, you're calling me back. From the Carudas to the ocean track, Haeli Shalemi Taba, Ubutebi Ben Puma Coloni, Intega Kulu, Sitin Kosing all of lava. Oh,
yeah. Hey, how's it? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the very first Round the Fire podcast video edition on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining me today. For those guys that are listening that have tuned into Spotify and Apple Podcasts, don't worry. I'm not going to do anything kind of special here on this very first video edition. You guys are still good with your audio. But if you do want to see the face behind the voice, head on over to the YouTube channel at RTF Podcast and subscribe over there and you will see it. I am giving you guys a little bit of a heads up, a bit of a warning that going forward I will be doing a couple more episodes that are a little bit more sort of visually engaging. So yeah, just make sure that you do keep one eye on the YouTube channel. Talking about the YouTube channel, by the way, wow. I mean, setting one of these things up is not easy. I've taken a month off from the last episode that I recorded, and trust me, it was not a conscious decision. We've literally moved furniture around the house to try and accommodate and get this whole YouTube video vibe right. We've moved in cabinets, we've put up bookshelves, we've taken them down, we've tried different places in the house, we've tried next to windows, we've checked lighting, we have tried everything. It's literally taken us a month just to get here. And then obviously with us moving from South Africa, I don't have a lot of my personal things. I don't have my mounts. I don't have, not that I read many books, I don't have many sort of memorabilia stuff. Rifles, binoculars, cases, things to look cool in the background. So I just decided one day, stuff it, I'm going to come up with my own background. Hence, I've got this pretty cool but very, very fake background behind me that I just had printed on a banner, and I thought, it's good enough. It's got a bit of a hunting theme to it. The reason why it is so fake is because if you look behind me, there is no ways I would have that many books or even read that many books. So that's probably the number one reason why it's so obviously fake. And then also pretty much the small kudu and whitetail horns behind me. So yeah, like I said, it's been taking a month to try and set up this little YouTube video setup that we've got going here. And by the way, massive respect and a big shout out to those guys that have got YouTube channels up and running, and I can honestly say that when they say please just subscribe to the channel, you know what, just do it, because there is so much that goes into it. I've got a new camera, I've got a new laptop, I've got lights, I've burned through 2 microphones. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into these things. So yeah, if somebody says please subscribe to the channel, it's literally just a click. And it means a lot for those guys that are working their butts off to try and put out some really good content there. While you're at it, make sure to try and subscribe to this channel too, please. The extra support would be much appreciated. When I was getting this channel up and ready and kind of mapping out the different topics that I want to talk about and how I want to try something a little bit different, but at the same time, I really want to try and keep that round the fire vibe, especially we are going to be focusing a lot on Africa hunting. I think that is the core of the podcast, and I'm going to stick with it. And a lot of people, the feedback that I've gotten seem to really appreciate that. So that is going to be the core of the podcast still. But now that we've got this visual aspect, I want to do a little bit more. I'm not going to tell you guys about it too much now. You will find out, but stay tuned. You can at least follow on the socials. I'll put up a couple posts there, and then obviously on YouTube, you'll find out about it. But I was looking back at some past episodes that I'd done, and I realized that this podcast has been going since 2020. So almost 6 years I have been doing the Round the Fire podcast, and it's crazy that it's actually come to this point now where I'm going to try and develop it as its own YouTube channel. You know, a lot's changed since that very first episode. Obviously moved countries, left a business behind, left country behind, family behind, community behind. A lot has changed. But one of the things that has tried to be consistent is this podcast. And I have received some really nice words of support, emails, text messages, private messages on social media from people just saying how much they enjoy the podcast, from people saying that it helped them with their planning for their trip to Africa. It helped them to kind of cross the line and just nudge them over the edge to actually book a hunting trip. And when I get emails like that, it really is appreciative. It means a hell of a lot. It really does. So I think with this podcast now in a visual format, the continued support from you guys really is cool. I have got ideas to take this podcast kind of on the road. There's a few guys lined up that have reached out to me that live here in Texas, and they've said, look, Jono, I would love to be on the podcast. I live an hour, 2 hours down the road from you. And I've kind of said, and that's fantastic. Should we do it live? Do you mind if I come and we can do it in your trophy room? So I'm going to start kind of doing a lot of things like that. I want to spread out a little bit more. I don't want to just be a talking head in front of my fake little background here. I do want to do a lot more. So again, especially for those guys listening on audio, please do me a solid. Just head on over, hit that subscribe button. I think you need to turn on notifications. I've got no idea, but at least that way, if I start to see the subscribers building up, it's really going to spur me on. I'm extremely positive and excited for what we can do with this podcast. After every episode, every video, like it, drop something in the comments, maybe talk about your own trips, your favorite animals, whether you like the podcast, whether you didn't, if you got some ideas for topics that you want me to talk about. If you would like to be on the podcast itself, maybe you've been to Africa and you want to share stories, hey, I'd love to have you on. I've spoken to a lot of people over the years, and I want to speak to a lot more. I was recently at the SCI banquet in San Angelo, and I met some incredible people. What an absolutely fantastic show that was. I even had, I know I mentioned in previous episodes, I had Hal Rose, a good follower of the podcast, hell of a nice guy, drive all the way up to the banquet to come and meet me. We had a nice chat. I wish we could have chatted for a lot longer. I was at Philip Glass's table, a really nice guy. I got to meet his wife, his family. My wife and his wife have gotten on since then. I've met so many people, and after that time I said to my wife, you know what, I've got to take this podcast out there, and I really want to explore more avenues of hunting in Africa. So again, anybody that would like to be on, share your story, I'm all ears, and I would love to have you on. It's an open invitation. It really is. Okay. Kind of with that out the way now, I have got a topic for today's episode, and I thought, you know what, seeing as this is quite a special episode, it's the very first one for YouTube, I'm going to kick it off with probably the one that I've been putting off for a while, but at the same time, it is a topic that has been requested by quite a few people, and I was sort of umming and ahhing, and I thought, you know what, why not, let's do it. You probably guessed already by whatever title I'm going to make this episode or this video, what I'm going to talk about. But I decided, here it is. The people are asking for it. I've got to give it to them. It is the story of my worst client as an outfitter when I still had Kingsview Safaris. I'm going to talk about that. Now, I'm going to say this upfront ahead. So there's no confusion at all. For anybody that knows me, for anybody that's met me, I hope you've picked up that generally I don't like talking ill of people. It's just not my style. It's not what I do. I never see the point in it. I have an extremely beautiful, loving wife. I've got 2 fantastic, healthy children. So in my little world, it's complete. I'm happy. I have everything I've ever wanted, and could never ask for anything more. So because I am happy and content, I wish nothing but the best on anybody else. And I've always said that I'll never speak ill of anybody. And I'm going to do that with this episode now. I just want to let you guys know that this is not going to be an episode where I'm going to talk ill or negatively of this guy. I'm not going to slander him. I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to mention where he comes from. I'm going to use this as a means to kind of give an insight for a lot of people as to maybe what PHs, what outfitters have to deal with, the importance of communication, the importance of making sure that you as a hunting client choose the right outfit to meet your needs, and also outfitters accept the right hunters and clients for their situation, because this story kind of has a whole lot of it, and I think there's a lot of good lessons to take away from it. So that is why I wanted to do this. But I'm not going to be throwing shade at this poor guy. I'm not going to be derogatory in any way. If anything, before the brown stuff hit the fan on this trip, I will say that my wife and I actually found him and his wife to be extremely pleasant and really nice people. It's just happened that the trip and the safari ended up going south pretty quickly, as you guys are going to hear. So I just wanted to get that up front. It's not really my nature to kind of speak ill of anyone or mention really sort of bad, nasty things about them. Okay, now that that's out the way, this happened probably, oh wow, this was before my daughter was born. So I think we're talking probably a good 10 years ago. So please excuse me if maybe some of the details are a little bit sketchy, especially the order in which we shot the animals. It's quite important. I was looking at some trophy photos from that time earlier on. I really don't have as many as I thought I did. And I was trying to just jolt my memory as to the order of the animals and what exactly transpired in the trip for it to make sense. But I've got a pretty good idea of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about from, the very first moment this guy booked right up until the end. If I've got any sort of nuggets or pieces of advice or words of wisdom from one of those stories, I will try and remember to put them out there. If not, you guys are more than welcome to take from this story or what you will. So here we go. The worst client I have ever had during my time as an outfitter for Kingsview Safaris. So this was way back when my business was, I would say, still relatively new. It was new in terms of compared to other outfits in the area. A lot of established hunting businesses where I was that have been going for 20, 25, 30 years. So I was still very much somebody that was working very hard on their reputation. I had a couple of hunts under my belt. I had a few good, decent trophy photos. There was a particular hunting forum, which is going to play a big part in the story later on, that was kind of sharing stories and information from past clients, and word was getting around there. And I was kind of building a fairly decent online presence. And I was also starting to get my concessions and my hunting areas together a lot more. And what I mean by that is I had a better understanding of what animals were out there. I had a better understanding of trophy quality. I had a better understanding of how each landowner operated. For example, some guys provided skinners, some guys provided vehicles, Some guys maybe didn't, and I had to bring an extra guy or two to come help load and skin. The accommodations, the way that they operated, some concessions didn't allow you to hunt on a Sunday, for example. Some concessions, I kind of learned that when we were deep into winter, deep into the kudu rut, these ones tended to get a little bit more of that sort of that mistier rainfall. It was cold. It wasn't really the best time to hunt. So I could kind of match up with what hunters were coming, what animals they were wanting with those concessions. So I was really sort of getting into a groove of things, but I wouldn't say I was 100% set up, established, just clients lining up to come hunt with me. There was still a lot of months where I went without any hunters. There was a lot of times where people would send me emails inquiring, wanting to book a hunt with me, and you email back and forth for a month or two, and then you kind of just realize that you've lost this client, or maybe you're not offering what they wanted, or you can't really sort of accommodate them. So what happened with me is that with any sort of new business, I'm sure a lot of you guys listening can relate to this, is that you're desperate for business. You need to get your business up and running. Any customer with a heartbeat and any sort of life in them, a bit of a spirit, you'll be like, I'll sign you up, come hunt with me. It didn't really matter. So I was really having any type of hunter that would come and hunt with me. Anyone that said yes, I was just over the moon with. So what had happened was I'd also, to try and push a little bit more business, I came up with hunting packages, just like every other hunting outfitter does. And especially the new hunting outfitter businesses, what's the first thing you do is you tend to drop your pricing to try and encourage more people to come with. So it just so happened that I put out this particular hunting package on a hunting forum, and this client that ended up booking with me, he reached out to me and he said I had been to Limpopo, I think it was 2 years prior to him coming to hunt in the Eastern Cape with me. And he'd said, this is all in email, by the way, us talking back and forth. We haven't been on the phone yet. We haven't sort of corresponded anything else. We haven't really taken it further than just general inquiries to my packages that I put out. And he was saying that he'd been to Limpopo and he'd shot this animal and this animal, and he's sort of given the list. And he said he had a good time with that outfitter. It was probably one of the, if not the biggest outfitter in Limpopo. I know of that operation. I don't know the owners. I've never been there, but I know of it. Very, very good reputation. It's everywhere. All the shows and all the forums. Very strong online presence. Anyway, he'd said that he did enjoy his time there, but he wanted to try and go to the Eastern Cape. Now, whenever I was booking clients, I always encouraged them to ask me as many questions as possible. And vice versa, I would try and ask them as many questions as possible, because the more answers I got from a potential client, the better I could put together a trip for them. You tend to kind of read between the lines when someone sends you an email. And from that, with us being such a small operation, I always felt like we could be quite flexible according to what the hunter, according to what their guests, the hunting group, whatever it may be, wanted. We could always be very adaptive. That's kind of something that I wanted my business to be. I didn't want to be a type of cookie cutter business where it was like, this is our lodge, this is where you will hunt, these are the only animals we've got, that's it, finished and klar. I wanted to be able to move around and have that sort of flexibility. And because we lived on a family ranch, but it was a cattle and a flower operation. We used to go there and we'd hunt a lot of baboons, bushbuck, bush pig, those types of things. But it wasn't a hunting ranch. And because of that, that gave me a lot of the flexibility to have various concessions. But I'd noticed that when I was corresponding back and forth with this client, he had said that one of the things that he didn't appreciate from his last trip was that he felt like there was a lot of driving. There was a lot of driving from different concessions. And him and his wife felt like, even though they had a great time, they felt like they had spent a lot of the time in the vehicle. Now, this was a particular point that I really wanted my business to be good at, was that I had good concessions with good numbers of animals on them. So we get to an area on a concession, you stay there and you hunt there. But such is the nature of the Eastern Cape, with it being so diverse and offering well over 40 different species, you're going to get animals that occur across different terrains and habitats. So, for example, you might be down by the coast in the Eastern Cape going for bushbuck, but you're not going to find a gemsbuck or a springbuck down there. You're going to go up into the Karoo, which could be a 4 to 8 hour drive inland, and there you're going to find your gemsbuck and your springbuck, but you're not going to find bushbuck, blue dacre, those types of species. So I had various concessions that kind of covered all of these animals, but I'd like to go to a concession, I'd like to stay there, hunt there, and then what we do is we drive to another concession, stay there, hunt there, and that would be the end of the trip. So when I was corresponding with this hunter, I think, let's give him a name. It's not his real name, but just for the sake of the story, so that I can make it flow a little better without referring to him as client or hunter, let's call him Nick. It's nowhere even near his name. So I sent Nick an email back and I'd say, look, this is the setup. Because of the package and the animals that you want to add onto it, we're going to have to go between two concessions, the coast and the Karoo. And I said to him that it's about a 4.5 hour drive once we finish at the coast to head up into the Karoo. And he responded with, that's okay, I'll allow it, but if that's the only driving we're doing. So just from that, like I said, reading between the lines, I could already tell that he really did not want to drive all over the place. So I kind of put that in the back of my mind and I thought, right, that's just something we got to work on. At this time, there's no sort of red flags or anything like that. The general correspondence back and forth, sending the details for the deposit, the banking details, that all went through perfectly fine. There was one thing, now that I look back on it with a bit of hindsight, is that every time I had potential clients that wanted to come and hunt with me, I would always send them a guest questionnaire. And it wasn't long, it was about 10 or 12 questions, and it was basic things. It was, are there any dietary requirements? For obvious reasons, we didn't want anybody to cook things with somebody that might have an allergy. So it was any dietary requirements, any allergies, sleeping preferences. This question was actually really important. This came from mine and my wife's time when we were managing a lodge in the Okavango Delta, when we realized just how important sleeping arrangements can be. If you give that option to people, all of a sudden you've got to get certain types of pillows. People want certain types of mattresses. Married couples might not necessarily want to sleep in a double bed. They prefer 2 single beds. You may have somebody that has a sleep apnea machine. Now all of a sudden you got to organize extension cables and plug points and whatnot. So we realized that sleeping arrangements and preferences is important on a trip. So we had those types of questions. And I also had a question at the end, which was, what does the term trophy mean to you? This was always the last question that I had on the questionnaire. And I always thought it was a very, very important question, because it gave me an insight into the type of hunter that was coming. A lot of the times people would say that, well, a trophy to me is the inches. Sometimes they'll say the SCI, gold standard, silver, bronze, whatever it may be. A lot of people would say a good representation of the species. A lot of people would say, I don't mind, I'm not going for a specific one. For me, it's about challenging myself, climbing mountains, putting in a stalk. I want to get as close as possible. Some people said, I prefer long range shooting, so I'd like to get these distances. It was really incredible to just what information you got from a simple question like that. So I had posted out this questionnaire via email to Nick. And usually within 2, maybe a week's time, everyone would more than likely return that via email with it filled out. And we never got it. I never got the questionnaire back from him, which I didn't think of at the time, but I still thought it was quite strange because it had some pretty pertinent questions on there that you'd feel would be useful for your trip. So anyway, the questionnaire didn't come back and I didn't think anything much of it. So the day came when Nick decided that they were going to arrive, the arrival date. And they arrived in Port Elizabeth. I think it was in the morning. But leading up to the trip, there was a lot of rain forecast. We're talking very, very heavy rain. And when we were down by the coast, especially along Port Elizabeth, you get a lot of these cold fronts that tend to come in. And once they set in, you're talking 3-4 days of just absolutely miserable, just dribbling, horrible weather. And this was forecast to come in. And I had relayed to them via email, and I'd said, look, guys, we got some really horrible weather coming. I suggest you try and pack some rain clothing, something, to keep you guys dry. We may have to change up a few of the plans. Initially, I had the 2 concessions that we were going to, the one down by the coast and then the one in the Karoo. But I had other options available, really nice places. But because we had such horrible weather coming in along the coast, we were talking that we would just been sitting in the lodge for, 4 or 5 days. It was that type of environment. I had relayed to him that I'm going to change it up a little bit. Excuse me, let me jump backwards. I don't mean I sent this to him the day of his arrival or the day before. This was a week before I had sent this email to him to say, Nick, I'm just going to change it up. I see the weather's coming in. It's pretty certain it's going to be this way. It's going to be miserable. Let me just change it in with another concession. It's got the animals that you are looking for. And then from there, we're going to go up into the Karoo. So I sent that to him, and he actually responded, and he said, fine, no problem. He was checking the weather too, and he was okay with that. It wasn't anything further or too far from the original concession. It was maybe an extra 45-minute drive, but it was along the same road that we would have taken heading up to the Karoo anyway. So he was cool with it. No problems. The day they arrived, I said it was a morning, but I think it was, now that I think back on it, I think it was actually late afternoon because I didn't want them to land at the airport and then have us drive to that concession in that miserable rain. There was a lodge that we were using that was literally 25, 30 minutes from the airport. A beautiful place, really, really nice. Get them to the lodge, have a shower. You've been traveling all day, rest up. It was literally have some dinner, and then the next day we'll head off to the concession. So I relayed this again to Nick, and he said, cool, that's fine by us. And what had happened was they landed, bad weather, raining, absolute cats and dogs. We made it over to the lodge, and we got them settled in. The next day, everything went fine, by the way, getting to know each other and conversing around dinner. The next day, again, it was absolutely bucketing down. But that night, Nick had said to me that he was really, really interested in a fallow deer. Now, fallow deer, where I'm from in the Eastern Cape, are not prolific. You've really got to go up the eastern side of the Eastern Cape and kind of more up into the East London area, that side, for really good fallow deer. And there was one particular ranch near us that bordered an extremely fancy, high-fenced game ranch. And a lot of the fallow deer had broken out a couple of years ago and kind of made home on this one particular ranch. I think it was a sheep ranch. It was a sort of a sheep wheat ranch. And he had said that he really, really wanted fallow deer. I explained to him that the concessions we were going to didn't have the fallow deer, but I knew of one property close by that maybe if there's a break in the weather, we could go out there and we could try and get a fallow deer. So I put it to him, and again, he agreed. He said, that's fine. Hey, everybody, I hope you're enjoying the episode. Please excuse me while I interrupt it for just a quick 2 seconds. Now, for regular listeners of the podcast, you'll know that for well over 14 years, I was a hunting outfitter down in the Eastern Cape. I absolutely love that province. I wrote the song Eastern Cape Eden because I just wanted to try and portray how incredible that province is. The array in the landscape, the vegetation, the animals, the terrain, the people. It's got absolutely everything. It really is a paradise on earth. As you know, I am no longer outfitting in South Africa, but what I have done is I've teamed up with a very, very good friend of mine. He runs an incredible hunting operation down in the Eastern Cape, and his setup is very similar to how I used to run things down with Kingsview Safaris. Very small, very personable, fantastic access to some of the incredible concessions of the Eastern Cape, a nice array of animals, and really he does offer such an incredible experience. I've had a few guests on that I have referred to my buddy. They've come back and we've done a podcast episode so you can actually hear for yourself first-hand experiences of the guys that went out there, and they just had an absolutely fantastic time. So if you are planning maybe your first trip to South Africa, maybe it's your second, maybe it's your third trip to South Africa, and you haven't quite been to the Eastern Cape and you'd really like to go and explore, experience it, and maybe there's a few animals you need to add to your trophy room that come from the Eastern Cape, then please feel free to reach out to me via email, jonomchugh@gmail.com. That's JONOMCHUGH@gmail.com. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, and I'm certainly happy to point you in the direction of my good friend, and I know he'll be more than happy to expand on any details, any other questions you may have for him. If you've already got your trip booked up, that's all cool. Even if you want to maybe ask some questions, maybe I can give you some advice, some tips, some pointers, anything like that, I'm happy to do so too. You can send me an email. I'll respond maybe with my cell phone number, and we can have a lekker chat on the phone. And I'm always interested to talk about hunting and help you guys out in the right direction. So yeah, anybody that's thinking about the Eastern Cape, please get a hold of me, and I'll most certainly point you to somebody that can give you an absolutely incredible experience. Okay, let's get back to that episode. So the next morning, as luck would have it, we had a bit of a break in the weather. So I said to Nick, well, let's go. Why not? It'll be a good opportunity. Looked like the sun was coming out. Generally, what happens is if there is a bit of a break in the weather with some sun, the animals tend to move out. They're wet, they're cold, they want to be in the sun. Maybe we got a good chance here. Now, this was probably one of the first moments, I think, that started just slowly getting things rolling. Because I had initially planned for us to wake up the next morning from that lodge and drive to the concession, I had already taken, before Nick and his wife had arrived, I had already taken Elvis and a couple of other guys up to the concession and left them there, get them settled in, because that's where we were going to meet up to start the hunting. I didn't want to have to load Nick, his wife, the bags, Elvis, all of his stuff, all of my stuff on the back of the truck, and then drive over. So I'd taken my Skinner and left them there, which meant that when we were going after this fallow deer, which I think it was about a 45-minute drive, which for you guys that have been to South Africa, you realize that's not really a far drive in terms of going to concession from the lodge. It's pretty acceptable. So when we got to this particular ranch, the farmer was a very keen houndsman. And it just so happened that earlier that morning, his dogs had picked up the tracks of a caracal, lynx, rooikat. And they got onto this cat and they killed it. And when we pulled up to the property, we pulled up outside of his barn. The cat was already there and the dogs already killed it. And as is customary, whenever you go to someone's property, as an outfitter, you tend to say hello. You ask them where the animals are. You be respectful, introduce them to your hunter. Maybe they've got a bit of rules for you, bit of chit chat back and forth. And Nick noticed that there was a caracal there and he asked about it. And the farmer told him the story and he said, he has sheep, so he's got to stay on top of these lynxes. And it didn't mean anything to him. He was probably just going to discard it. So Nick asked if he could have the caracal, could he have the cape? He'd never seen one before and he was happy to take it back home with him and have it mounted. The farmer obliged and he said, sure, no problem, there you go. And he gave it to him. So we carried on our merry way and we were going to go and look for the fallow deer. This property wasn't a large property, but it was big enough that you had to kind of put in some good work on your feet and really sort of walk around and look for these animals. And it had kind of these deep rolling hills with sort of deepish valleys that were very thick with a lot of wattle trees and bushes at the time. So we parked up high. We'd parked up probably 3 ridges over, and I was glassing, and you could kind of see that the sun was starting to break through the clouds quite nicely. And I managed to spot some of the fallow deer. They were coming down one of the ridges towards us, but they were going into a deep valley. And I'd said to Nick, look, we've had a lot of rain. I don't really know this property too well. At the same time, I don't want to take my truck down there. I don't want to get stuck on these roads. I don't want to go slipping down there. I can only presume that once we get down into there, it's going to be even wetter. So let's leave the truck up here and let's walk it in. And I'll never forget, Nick still made a comment about, are we going to have the trackers join us? And I said to him, no, they're not here, but we can make do. And I was pretty sure that the farmer, he had enough workers on the farm there that would have been happy to help us load it up if we gotten a fallow deer or anything like that. So I wasn't too bothered by it. And as we kind of come out of that second ridge and up over the hill and was starting to maybe make our way and look down at the bottom, those clouds just went whoop. And it bucketed down. It absolutely came down. And we were slipping and sliding all over the place. We were trying to get down at least to the bottom of this small valley or draw, whatever you want to call it, to try and at least have a look at these fallow deer. But because it had now started raining so heavily, they went deep into this thick bush. And there was no getting them out there. You couldn't even see the tracks. The rain was coming down so hard, it was starting to wash. So I had said to Nick, who by this time was looking like the wettest, shaggy dog you have ever seen. He looked absolutely miserable. And I said to him, let's go. We're just wasting our time here. So thankfully, we got back to the truck. It wasn't stuck. We made it back to the shed. We picked up the caracal, tossed it on the back, and we just shot back to the lodge. I said to Nick, I'll tell you what, I'm going to run into town. I'm going to get a few supplies. I'll give you 2 hours, have a shower, get warm, grab some brunch, and then I'll pick you up and we'll head over to the concession. So we went there. I picked up a few things, came back to the lodge. Nick and his wife were ready to go. They had been showered and they grabbed a bite to eat. And I remember, again, this is hindsight coming back to me. So it's easy to kind of say, oh, I should have known back then. But I remember when he got into the vehicle and we loaded his bags and I'd said to him, how was everything? How was the lodge? And he said, oh, this isn't my style. This is more for Trump's boys. This is where Trump's boys would stay. Not for me. I don't like it. This is Trump's boys. And he kept saying Trump's boys the whole time. And again, this is 10 years ago. I've got no idea what he's talking about. I mean, it's going right over my head. Donald Trump, as far as I'm concerned, wasn't even in the picture at that time, let alone his sons. I now know what he was talking about. I think he was insinuating that it was too fancy for him, and obviously, I don't know his political agenda or prowess or whatever you want to call it, his preferences, but I'm guessing he wasn't exactly a fan of Trump. But the way that he said it was a negative term. Like, it was too fancy for him, and this is the type of place Trump's boys will stay at. Again, it just went right over my head. I had no idea what he was talking about. I think I still gave like a nervous chuckle of okay. All right, I guess so then. So we head out on the road, and we start driving to the next concession. Now, this concession that we went to, I loved it. It was such a cool concession, man. I've got so many stories there and amazing places. It not a massive property, but it was a fun place to hunt because it kind of had everything. It was on the backside of a mountain range, and in kind of like the southeastern corner of the property, it bordered a nature reserve in the Eastern Cape. And what happened was, it wasn't a very well-visited nature reserve. It wasn't a very well-funded nature reserve. It was very sort of run down and derelict. And their fencing from the nature reserve, we're talking about a government nature reserve here, was terrible. So those animals, they came in and out. And we're talking good kudu numbers, good eland numbers, a lot of mountain reedbuck, duiker. There was some bushbuck there, not a hell of a lot, but there was some bushbuck. It was just a really good property to hunt, and I got on so well with the concession owner. Hell of a nice guy. Every time we shot an animal, he was right there with his family. He brought the guys to come help load. Nothing ever seemed like a hassle for him. But one of the things that I loved about this particular place was that it had a cabin. It was a 3-bedroom cabin. It wasn't your big quintessential lodge or anything like that. It was just a good 3-bedroom cabin, and it was tucked right up in the side of this mountain. It was beautiful. When you went up into the cabin, you had a look over the entire hunting area. It was absolutely stunning. Small little place. Like, there wasn't all the bells and whistles that usually come with it. There was one bathroom. It had a shower. It had a really nice bath. There was a good kitchen. There was a lounge. It was comfortable. There was mounts on the walls. Lekker little place. And it had this decking out the back. Like I said, you could see over everything. And we used to love, whenever I went and hunting there with other hunters, you'd sit there and you just glass for hours, even over lunchtime. And a lot of the times you'd glass like an inyala way off in the distance. And everyone would get excited, and you'd come up with a game plan. And then from there, you'd glass some wildebeest, and then you'd glass some zebra. So it was a really nice place. I absolutely loved it. But the road to get up there was horrendous. It was washed. You had to engage 4x4 low gear. It was a proper adventure. I liked it. I enjoyed the experience. So we're driving. We pull into the area. From the time we left the lodge till here, myself and Nick, we're getting on well. We're chatting. My wife was coming up in the other vehicle. She brought a lot of the supplies for the cabin. She was going to do the cooking and the hosting with us. So she wasn't with us, but she was bringing another vehicle. And we started making our way up the cabin along this road, just bouncing all over the place. And again, call it my naivety. Nick says, God, this road is terrible. This is such a bad road. And I said, yeah, it's, we're driving up a mountain. And then he said, have you ever heard of the Ho Chi Minh Trail? No. I, again, just like right over the top of my head. I have no idea what you're talking about. I do now, but I didn't at the time. And I went, nope, never heard of it. And he said, well, something about the Ho Chi Minh Trail being a horrendous place and the worst trail ever, and some sort of a travesty. And he said, I'm going to call this road the Ho Chi Minh Trail Road. This is the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And again, I didn't know what he was talking about. So I kind of just nervous laughed and, all right, Ho Chi Minh Trail it is. Let's get up to the cabin. Now, again, looking back at these little cracks, they were just starting. So we get to the cabin, we get settled in. Mind you, the weather on this side of the mountain now is a lot better. I was glad at the time that I made that switch to that concession, because as the trip went on, the weather down by the coast just got worse and worse and worse. And I remember sending a text message to the concession owner the concession manager that we were going to hunt with along the coast, and kind of asking him, how things are going. Maybe I was hoping we could head back there. And he said, man, we are washed out. It's flooding. I haven't even seen an impala. Like, there's nothing on there. Everything's just hidden up, trying to get out the rains. It's a good thing you guys weren't here. So put a little tick in my box. I was happy that we moved to the different concession. We got settled into the cabin. It was a fantastic place. Now, with this particular property, as I said, the cabin is up in the side of a mountain. It's a good drive up there. Way down at the bottom, you're probably talking about a 20-minute drive to get down to the ranch house, which is where the concession owner lived. And that's also where the skinning facilities are. There's the electricity down there. It's where we'd always, and every time we shot an animal, we'd take it down there, we gut it, cape it out, those types of things, the salt rooms. And it also had the staff quarters at the back. So when I had traveled up the previous day and dropped Elvis and the other guys off, that's where they stayed, in those staff quarters. There just wasn't enough space up at the cottage. So when we got up to the cottage, again, Nick mentioned, are we going to pick up the trackers? Are we going to see the trackers and the skinners? And I didn't realize at the time, but he had brought a whole load of sweets, candy, gifts, toys, pencils, stationery for them. I think from his previous trip, maybe he saw somebody else do it and he thought it was a good idea, and he just wanted to give back. Very nice gesture. Like I said, pretty much a cool guy at this stage. And I didn't realize at the time, but I'd said to him, no, we'll see them later. And I think he'd probably got an impression that I'd kept delaying the skinners and saying on the trackers and saying, no, they're coming, which wasn't my intention. It's just the way that the logistics had played out. So that day, I think we decided we were just going to take a walk. We were going to take a walk. He hadn't shot any animals yet, and there was a good chance we would bump into any one of the animals on his package. He still had impala, blessbuck, whatnot. And I just realized I missed out a big chunk. I missed out a big chunk of the story. Yeah, like I said, sorry, the details were a little bit hazy. So I'm going to rewind quickly a little bit. I'm not good enough to edit out video parts yet, so I'm just going to rewind it back and tell you this part of the story. When we busted out on the fallow deer, we had decided to stay one more night at that lodge where we were. And here's the reason why. He had blessbuck on his package. And because there was so much rain and it was just a horrible time, literally right next to the lodge he was staying at was a good friend of ours. They owned a property and they had some really, really nice blessbuck on it. And because we had bombed out on the fallow deer, I felt a little bit bad, and I really wanted Nick to get off on a good start, on a good footing, especially with the weather being the way that it was. I kind of needed to take my chances as they came. So the neighboring property, as I said, good friends of ours, they had really nice blessbuck on there. I had said to Nick, I'll tell you what, let's go out in the afternoon, evening, and see if we can get you a blessbuck. So we went out and we came across a really nice blessbuck ram. And good, just a standard stalk. We got up nice and close to it. I put up the sticks. Nick was on the stick. Dropped it. One shot. Fantastic. Well done. So, blessbuck down. We start walking up to the blessbuck. And obviously after the shot, the herd had spooked and they kind of ran down to our right and then they ran up. I would say probably 225 yards ahead of us, but they're looking back, staring at us. And in that herd was a beautiful big white blessbuck ram. And Nick said, I've never seen a white blessbuck ram before. Can I take it? I said, yeah, sure. I mean, you're welcome to. So we put on a stalk. Obviously, they had spooked. They kind of see us. We put on a stalk. Then we closed the distance to about 140 yards. So just a nice little chip and a putt shot. Again, put the sticks up. Nick was on there. And he took a shot, dropped it. Fantastic. What a start. 2 shots, 2 animals. He was a good shot and he did really well. But as I said earlier, I had taken the skinners and I dropped them off at the other concession. So I didn't have anybody with me. So we load up the one blessbuck, myself and Nick. We drive, load up the second blessbuck. And he said, do you have any skinners? To which I'd said, no, not here. But what happened was I took him back to the lodge and our family ranch was 10 minutes away up the mountain. I'd said to Nick, look, it's been a long day. You know, we're wet, we're tired. You head into the lodge, get showered, have some dinner, and I will pick you and your wife up the next morning. What I did was I shot back to the farm. I shot back home and I caped out. I gutted. I skinned out those 2 blessbuck myself. I caped out the heads. I salted them, did everything. Got to bed at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Next morning, woke up, picked up Nick, told me the place was Trump's Boys, drove to the concession, drove up to the cabin, told me Ho Chi Minh Trail, and now we're back to the story. So I apologize for that. That was I can't believe I forgot that part, but that was quite an important part of the story. So now we're at this cabin, and as I said, the guys, the skinners, they live down in the staff quarters. So Nick's been here for probably 2 or 3 days now, and he hasn't seen any trackers or skinners. And that afternoon, I say to Nick, look, let's head out after lunch. Let's see what we can find. And we head on out there. We've got blessbuck off the list, which is good, but there was still Inyala, there was Impala, there was Zebra, there was Wildebeest, Springbuck. And we headed on out for a walk. And I think we were at the cabin for about 10 minutes. We were just glassing. And all of a sudden, just from the bush below us, this herd of zebra just come, just whistling and running right past us, going absolutely crazy. I didn't think that they had seen us. So I kind of pulled Nick back a little bit and I said, let's drop down below them. And the way that they're going to keep running, we should be able to get nice and close to them. So we did that. We dropped back down and I got into position and it looked like the zebra herd had kind of just passed us and we'd missed out. And I was about to close the sticks up and say, you know what, this is what it is. Unlucky, let's head back. When all of a sudden there was a stallion that was, for whatever reason, running a bit further behind the herd. And it came, not running too fast, but it was trotting from our right to our left. And it was going through behind some thick bushes, opening, thick bushes, opening, thick bushes, opening. And I said to Nick, okay, it's going to come into that clearing. When it comes into that clearing, I'm going to whistle and I want you to thump it. Textbook. Came in, sort of trotting. I gave it a, hey! Zebra stopped. Nick hit it with my 270. A little bit of sort of underpowered, but we were close within distance. And that stallion dropped right there. Just dropped dead. So I radioed the landowner. Like I told you, cool guy, always willing to help and partake with loading the animals. And I tell him where we are, and he said he's bringing the truck and he's bringing the guys. He pitches up with about 6 skinners to help load. And I wouldn't say I'm quite a cheeky guy, but I can, my tongue can get pretty loose sometimes. And as he pulled up with these guys on the back, I still said to Nick, is that enough skinners for you? Yeah, I don't think that was probably a good idea at the time. I didn't mean anything by it, but I had to have a little bit of a jab back at him. And anyway, loaded up the Zebra and off we went back down to the skinning shed. I'm going to have to kind of get on a little bit with the story because there's a lot happened and I don't want this podcast to take too long. I'm going to have to do this a 2-parter. So that day was fantastic. We went back up to the cabin. We had a great meal. I will say this, with my wife being there, with Nick's wife being there, us sitting around the table, chatting, it was great. We were sharing stories. We were getting to know each other. They were telling us a lot about, they were American. They were telling us a lot about what they do back home. They cook. They're telling us about their family. We were sharing stories back and forth with them too. It was really lovely. We really did get on well. The next morning, we woke up nice and early and we decided we were going to go for kudu. But there's another part that I'm missing out, which is crucial, and I got to bring it in. Before we'd planned this trip, Nick had said that he wanted his hunt filmed. And I said, sure. He asked me, do I know a guy? And up until this point, I hadn't had any hunts filmed with clients, but I knew of people that could do it. It just so turned out that there was a acquaintance. I wouldn't say he was a friend of mine, but he was an acquaintance that went to school with me. I think he was 2 years younger than me. We went to high school. And he had started his own media business. I see he did a lot of weddings. He filmed quite a few hunts, those types of things. He was trying to sort of break through into the industry and produce some okay stuff. Some videos look really good. So Nick had told me in an email, and he said, I would like the hunt filmed. Do you know anybody? So I reached out to this old school acquaintance of mine, and I said to him, look, would you be willing to come and film this hunt for a client that I got coming out? It's just the one hunter. These are the animals. Can I get your pricing so that I can relay to him? The guy sent me his pricing, said this is how much it's going to cost per day, editing, whatever, whatnot. I literally copied what was sent to me and I pasted it in the email and I sent it back to Nick and I said, there you go, sir. That's all the details. This is what he offers. This is his name. These are his contact details. You're more than welcome to carry on and deal directly with him. I'm not going to add anything onto it or get any sort of commission or anything like that. If you'd like me to carry on planning it and putting together the logistics, I'm happy to do so. So Nick replied and he said, looks all good. Let's book it and let's go ahead. So I'd gotten back to my friend and I said, cool, it's all on. Get ready. He had said that he could only make it from, I think it was the 4th day, the 3rd or the 4th day that we were there. And would that be okay? Now, looking at the weather, I'd kind of presumed that there wasn't going to be too much hunting going on. So I said, that's fine by us. Just make it, this is the concession we're at. And I sent it to him. So the morning after the zebra, the cameraman arrived, the videographer arrived, and he arrived in the morning. And we had decided that kudu in this area was a good opportunity. So it was going to be high up on our list, and we were going to really push for kudu this time round. So we all jump on the truck. I load up Elvis and another guy. I think his name was Boyson. Boyson. I think his name was Boyson. Jan Boyson. Loaded him on the back, and we went driving around scouting for kudu. We did a lot of glassing. We parked up. We checked valleys. We checked klooves. We checked everywhere. Mountaintops. We didn't even see a kudu cow. Like nothing. And kind of starting to get a little bit, I'd like to at least see something. And I could see that Nick was probably getting a little bit irritated. I'd spoken up about the area. With us moving to this new concession, I felt like I had to kind of promote it a little bit. So I told him, fantastic area with kudu. Told him that the nature reserve with the bad fencing, you get a lot of kudus coming down, that type of stuff. And here we are, not even seeing as much as a kudu cow. Famous last words. Whenever you go on a safari and you hear someone say, oh, this place is loaded with kudu or loaded with bushbuck, it's got a load of mountain rebuck, and you think, oh no, you're cursed. I think I pretty much did the same thing there. So we're driving around and we didn't see anything. I called it quits and I decided, guys, let's head in for lunch and regroup. So we drop the Skinners off at the staff quarters and we head back up the Ho Chi Minh Trail and we get into the cabin. Now, my wife had been hosting Nick's wife and sort of chatting to her, and they were getting on great. But at the same time, she was also cooking lunch and getting it ready for when we came back. She knew sort of the time that we'd be back for lunch. And I remember we pulled up to the cabin and switched off the truck, and I always kind of try to make light-hearted, chirps and comments about the situation just to keep things light. And I said, well, guys, we may not have gotten kudu, but at least we can go and have some sort of lunch. And Nick gets out and he slams the door. Absolutely slams it, almost off his hinges. And he just walks inside, straight inside, straight through the kitchen dining room area and into his room. And I was taken back. Honestly, I was shocked. I didn't know what to make of it. So I kind of walk in and Nick's wife said, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, we were just looking for kudu. We didn't find anything, but we've come back for lunch. So she goes in to the room, obviously to check on him. And my wife looks at me and I look at her and I'm like, shit, I don't know. It's nothing really bad happened. We just didn't see any kudu. It's part of it. We're still going to go out this afternoon. They did not come out for lunch. Stayed in their room until 4 o'clock. We got there probably 12. I still remember we politely knocked on the door. There was no answer. So and like I said, this isn't a big lodge. This is a nice small cabin. You can hear people walking around. It's one of those places. The wooden floors and the creaky sort of walls. It's a really cool cabin. So we knew they were in there. We knew they didn't go anywhere. Knocked on the door. Would you guys like to come for lunch? Is everything okay? Nothing at all. So, okay. My wife and I, we had a very nice lunch together with the cameraman, and we were kind of chatting because we all went to the same school. So we had some common ground to kind of chat about and reminisce on. And my wife at the time, I think she was 7.5 months pregnant. I might be wrong, but she was carrying. You could very obviously see that my wife was pregnant. And my wife had a very good pregnancy with our daughter, but around that time she'd always, tend to get tired as pregnant women would, and she'd want to go nap. So after lunch, once we'd eaten and cleaned up, my wife said she's going to go and kick her feet up and have a bit of a nap because she's got to prep for dinner. So I said, sure, you carry on. So my wife went off and she had a kip. And at about 4 o'clock, I'm starting to look at my watch now and I'm thinking, we got to get out there. We should have been out there probably 2 hours ago. I had plans in my mind of what kloof we were going to sit at, where we were going to glass. It would take this long to drive there. I had plans of putting up Elvis on this ridge with a radio and Boyson on that ridge with a radio. His name wasn't Boyson. Anyway, I'll have to think of it. Like I said, these details are a bit shoddy. I apologize. But I had these plans, and Nick and his wife, they just hadn't come out. So I tap on the door and I'm like, are you guys ready to go hunting? Door whips open. Nick's ready to dress, and he's like, yes, let's go. And I'd mentioned, would your wife like to come with? Maybe sit in the truck and see everything? No, she's not interested. Okay. Now the attitude and the vibes are starting to get pretty cold at this point. So I'm thinking I've got to pull something out the bag here. I've got to try and save this trip. I mean, we've got 3 animals down. We've got 2 blessbuck and a nice, beautiful zebra stallion. But I got to try and pull something out the bag. So we all load up. Cameraman's on the back. The 2 trackers are on the back. I'm sitting in the front with Nick, trying to make small conversation. It's like trying to draw blood from a stone. It really is. Doing my best. And I decided that we were going to check this one really deep valley, this really deep kloof. It had a good road that the concession owner a couple of years ago had actually concreted the road down to it. So even though that area had some rain, I was confident that we could still drive down there, and it was really thick bush at the bottom. But the reason why he had concreted that road was because he was trying to build a dam. It got a lot of water flow from down there through this valley, and he was trying to build a really nice dam because he wanted to irrigate his alfalfa, his lucerne lands for a lot of his sheep that he had, and he had built that there. So I knew we could get down there. It was a good water source. There must be something down there, and we could come back up. I came around the bend. So what happens is you come around the bend, and then the road really drops down steep, and then it turns off to the left. And as I came around the bend, I'm still trying to chat to Nick. I'm trying to make the situation good. I'm explaining about the beautiful places of the Eastern Cape and all the uniqueness, and maybe I'm trying to tell him a hunting story. In fact, I can't remember. I was doing something, but I was talking to him. And all of a sudden, you just hear like this rapping on the roof, just da 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 da. And the guys at the back had seen, because the road had dipped down. Sorry for those of you guys listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but I'm doing gestures with my hands on how steep the road is. If you come to YouTube, you can see it. But because the road was so steep, they were obviously leaning forward on the truck, and they could see this dam, this water hole at the bottom that the concession owner was trying to build. And there was 4 magnificent kudu bulls standing there. So I look up from driving behind the wheel, and I see these kudu bulls, and they're drinking. They haven't seen us yet. But the truck is parked on such a steep angle. Let me tell you something. I pulled that handbrake up so high, you swear it was touching the roof of the truck. Like I couldn't go any closer. If I went closer, those kudu bulls would have seen us. But at the same time, this was such a steep road that I didn't want my truck rolling all the way down into the bottom of that valley. So I pulled it up really high. And I remember I rolled down my window and I stuck my head out the window. and I made a gesture to the guys at the back to be quiet and to stay still. And because I did that, the cameraman who was on the back of the bucky, on the back of the pickup, was filming. He'd already started filming, but he had filmed us getting out of the truck. I got the sticks. I went around to Nick's side. I ushered him out, nice and quiet. And I went probably 10, 15 yards forward from the truck. I never really liked shooting from the truck, but I understand in some situations when you're caught with your pants down, like we were here, what can you do? I couldn't go any further. It's not like I could reverse the truck up. It's not like I could reverse the truck down, move it out the way. We were stuck. We were in a precarious situation. With everything that had been happening that day, I could see that my client was starting to get tense, irritated, frustrated, whatever it may be. He has a fantastic opportunity to shoot a really nice kudu bull. So I go, like I said, 10, 15 yards ahead of the truck. The cameraman is filming now. He's on the back, but he's obviously filmed us getting out of the truck, walking forward. I put the sticks up. Nick puts the rifle in the sticks. I take a look through my binoculars, and I really wanted to have a good look at these kudu. And I wanted to see, which one was the better one, which was the best one we could shoot at, which one was standing the best place for us. But they were all drinking, obviously with their heads down, facing us. So it was a kind of a frontal shot. And as Nick put the rifle on the sticks, and I looked through my binoculars, they looked up. The kudu bulls looked up at the same time. And I remember Nick just saying, which one? Like in a very pissed off, gruff voice. Like, which one? Like, tell me now. But I'm on my binoculars. I can't see which one he's kind of looking at. If I say the one on the left, but his scope is the one on the left, and he moves it and he loses it, or if I say the one on the right and he's looking at the one on the furthest left and he shoots the one do you understand what I'm trying to get at? These are the things that a PH very has to quickly ascertain in his mind as to what is the client looking at, which is the best one, which one do we shoot, and it all happens like this, really, really fast. So I'm looking through the binoculars, and thankfully the one that's the furthest left, it noticed us first, and it lifts its head up, and thank goodness it just had magnificent horns. It had everything you'd look for in an Eastern Cape kudu bull. I didn't even really get a chance to look at the other two. But as the one on the left lifted up and saw us, it kind of turned slightly quartering away, as if to say, I got to get out of here. What is that? So I just said to Nick, far left, quartering away. That's all I said. And he just hits it. Great shot. In the chest, slightly quartering away. The other two run off to the right. They make their way up the side of the hill. You can hear the rocks falling as they're getting up there. The one that Nick shot dashes up the valley. So it goes right into the thick stuff. But I can hear from the shot and from the way that the kudu reacted that it was a great shot. Solid. And Nick had been shooting really, really well too. So I was confident in that. And we turn around and kind of look at the skinners. I look at Elvis. He hunted with me so much. He knows. He gave me the thumbs up and he said, yeah, looks good. Looks good. We went to the cameraman and we reviewing the footage, and just looks like a good shot from the way that the kudu bull reacted to it. So we climb back in the pickup and we head on down there nice and slowly. It's amazing what happens when you shoot an animal, especially an animal like a kudu bull. All of a sudden now, Nick is just chatting away. He's happy as anything. Oh, I saw it to the scope and what a great place and all these types of stuff. Absolutely incredible what an animal can do to just the whole atmosphere and the vibe of a hunt. So we make our way down into the bottom of the valley and we're parked down there, and it was originally an old riverbed, an old waterway, and when the landowner had built this concrete dam wall to save the dam, to save the water and dam it back up, it had exposed a lot of the boulders from where the water had been washing and running. So it was difficult to get sort of a vehicle in there. So I parked quite a ways back, and we walked in to where we saw the kudu bull running away, and we're all looking around, and Elvis picks up some blood. So I'm like, yes, fantastic. We got some blood. And that is where I'm going to leave this part 1 of the story. I thought I gotta do it in a 2-parter, guys. There's a lot more coming this way. I don't mean to leave you guys hanging on this little cliffhanger, but it does get better. So, for those guys listening on the audio, please run on over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to try and do a little bit more, like I said earlier. At least that way, if I do explain anything with some photos or some visuals, you guys don't miss out on it. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, thank you very much. I truly appreciate the support. I am going to come back with part 2 very, very soon. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Thank you very much, and I will see you in part 2. Cheers.